Chingle Hall is known as one of the oldest houses in Lancashire, England, and said to be one of the most haunted. In Goosnarr, near Preston, Chingle Hall was built as a manor house in 1260 by Adam D. Singleton and was originally named Hall. The land had been in the family since 1066. Laid out in the shape of a cross, it was surrounded by a moat and was accessed by a small wooden drawbridge, later replaced by a brick-built bridge in the 1500s. The wooden beams used in its construction are Norwegian oak, thought to have come from a wrecked Viking boat discovered in the Ribble Valley in Goosnarr being one of their settlements. Later renamed Chingle Hall, it stayed with the Singletons until the last of the line died in 1585. The house then passed to the Wall family, who owned it until the mid-13th century. In 1680, the west side of the house was extended. It was also said that during the Battle of Preston in 1648, Oliver Cromwell visited the hall and climbed one of its chimneys to spy on royalists below. In 1794, the house was taken over by the Farrington family and later bought by the Longtons. In 1945, it was Renwick and Mayard Howarth before they bought the property in 1960. Following the death of her husband, Mrs. Howarth was left as custodian and sole resident of Chingle Hall. She acted as host to public guided tours of the building, regaling visitors with tales of the building's fascinating history and its spirits, of which she said to have personally experienced. After Mrs. Howarth died, the house stood empty and vandalized until Sandra and John Coppleston Bruce bought and restored it in 1986. John had plans for the estate, including the most detailed excavation of the grounds ever undertaken and converting the nearby barn into a Tudor-themed restaurant. None of these ended up actually happening, but the public tours were reinstated until it was sold on to the Kirkhams in 1995. The hall's historic and supernatural legacies date right back to the original resident family. Being Catholic, the Singletons not only installed a chapel but later added 2 priest holes during the 16th century when holding masses was punishable by death. One was located in the floor to hide the evidence of mass and another in the chimney breast to secrete the priest. One of these hides were undiscovered until 1970, when it had apparently revealed itself. When Mrs. Howarth saw smoke coming from the chapel ceiling, she called out the fire brigade, who found that it was coming from the unknown chimney hide where a log was burning from the inside out. There have been many ghostly experiences reported at the hall, and one presence is said to be Eleanor de Singleton, who was the last of that family to own the estate. Born in 1568, the death of her parents left her orphaned at the age of 6, as she was left in the care of her 2 uncles. They believed the girl was suffering from madness and kept her locked in the priest's room, where she allegedly suffered sexual abuse at the hands of her guardians. This resulted in numerous pregnancies, some of her babies stillborn whilst the surviving ones were killed. She eventually died at the age of 17 whilst giving birth to a child with an enlarged head, though it had been suggested that she was murdered. Over the years, visitors have reported a smell of lavender in that room thought to be hers. Others have detected the odor of a dog, possibly a hound that kept her company. People have said they can sense an overwhelming sense of sadness from the moment they entered the room. The most famous ghost of all was John Wall, who was born in the hall in 1620. In 1641, he went to France and became a Franciscan priest. In 1678, he was back in England visiting a friend where he was arrested at Rushock Court near Bromsgrove and convicted of being a Catholic priest. Taken to Worcester jail, he was offered his life if he would forsake his religion, which he refused. He was hanged, drawn and quartered at Redhill on August 27, 1679, and his remains buried in St. Oswald's churchyard in Worcester. Following the dissolution of the house during the French Revolution, a group of nuns were said to have brought his head back to Chingle and buried it within the bounds. Since then, he has been reportedly seen walking the grounds. There was also another story told by Mrs. Howarth back in the mid-70s which appear to be largely unaware of during the years of investigators and owners. Mrs. Howarth said that on many evenings, she would be sat in the far end of the lounge watching television with her dog curled up by the fire. Then, there would be the sound of the front door opening and closing and one of the two figures seen crossing through to the other side of the room and the doorway to the stairs. The figure was usually a hooded monk in a brown cowl, and the dogs would leap up with their tails wagging and walk with him to the stairs. However, the monk was sometimes in black, in which case her dogs would crouch with their heads down. The brown monk is believed to be John Wall. Today Chingle Hall and its grounds are closed to both investigators and the public as the current owner keeps it as a private residence.